title here is Maintaining Aging Assets for Water Utilities with Data Analytics, and I wanted to mention that for even those who might be participating who have new facilities, all your assets are starting to age at present and need to be managed just as much as those of us that have very old assets. Today's agenda, I'd like to share a bit of what I found to be missing in our industry over the years within many of the utilities around the U.S. and the world. Missing pieces related to today's agenda are small, but sometimes large disconnects in how we manage our work within our utilities, the cost associated with the level of services that we promised our stakeholders. And with that, we'll have a first poll question. Anurita?
Thank you, Joel.
And might I add, the EAM referred to in the question is not a software platform, but rather a system-wide plan or strategy.
Which of the following does your organization have? Please select one option. EAM strategy, EAM plan, both of them, and none of these. Thank you for voting. We have 14% of the respondents saying that they have EAM strategy in place. 29% of them have an EAM plan in place. 43% have both of them in place, and 14% have none of these. Over to you, Joel.
I'm hoping everybody can see my screen again.
Yes, we can.
The EAM plan and strategy aspects of an asset management plan. We just heard from everyone, and I'm surprised actually with how many of you actually have a full plan. And I'm hoping you mean a complete plan, because AM planning, this is one of the areas where over 85% of the utilities I've worked with have had what I call a failure to launch. They manage all types of activities, but without any integrated planning tied to the financial costs of the critical assets within their business plan. Consequently, most of the activities are managed in what I like to refer to as silos of excellence, devoid of their effect on one another or the aggregate. Now, as far as what AM is, or what asset management is, you know, you can see what I've put down here. These were a couple of definitions from other people, but it is a consistent set of coordinated procedures for the entire organization to plan, direct, measure, and control all the activities and critical assets based on lowest life cycle and risk, which is extremely important, and it has to be tied to the business plan, which says what's important and how much we have to spend on it. Now, there's several important items that revolve around asset management and EAM planning and strategizing. They are the classic management cycle of planning, directing, measuring, and controlling. An EAM plan, asset management activities expressed in terms of these cycles are as follows. each critical assets life cycle plan, or failure defense plan, as I like to call them, is created to predetermine how various stages and/or life cycle events, breakdowns, sewer collapses, line breaks, and so on, will be handled. So each defect or failure isn't a fire drill. We have a predetermined methodology of managing the same. Now, as far as directing, no utility has enough staff or resources to handle every system or asset failure that occurs when it occurs. So a world-class utility deploys staff and resources based on the aforementioned failure defense plans, which are prioritized by their actual criticality and a risk to the level of service we've pledged to our stakeholders. As far as measurement, it's in order to make sound financial life cycle decisions for our critical assets, we need to measure performance and plot deterioration over time and be able to comprehend warning signs of these defects and make the repair, rehab, and replace decisions in preordained fashion in order to minimize collateral damage and costs associating with not being proactive and running assets to failure. And in regard to controlling, we can only improve over time by analyzing the measurements we take and making sound decisions to take actions and modify those methods or procedures or our resources accordingly. And in respect to how most utilities do in these areas, most utilities plan adequately and have some asset procedures within specified times for these activities of preventative maintenance, but these aren't usually expressed in financial terms and not with real risk in mind. Capital planning or CIP programs very often don't even account for the cost of refurbishment. And critical assets typically go through several refurbishments, which are quite expensive and extend life cycle within their total life cycle. Now, in measurement, these are where most of the big failures occur in our utilities. In nearly every utility I've seen, they're not collecting accurate and complete data at the asset level and at the activity level that's in line with KPIs that are linked directly to both their AM plan and their individual failure defense plans. And what I mean by this is across the organization, one level of management doesn't consider what the other level of management is doing, and we tend to only look at what that level of management is interested in seeing rather than sharing and making sure we stay on the same corporate aim. Anyway, and then controlling, finally, making sound life cycle decisions to control critical asset performance and cost only comes as a result of analyzing, that means analytics, complete and accurate relevant data. Sound decisions are nearly impossible to make for some activity, for activities without some type of activity-based costing. And you cannot control what you don't measure accurately. And with this, I don't mean just the typical things that we have in a CMMS or an EAM platform. They may measure individual pursuits or individual work, but they don't necessarily keep in line with the asset management plan. Now, I'm sorry, I think I jumped a slide. I think Anurita has another poll question for us.
Requesting everybody's attention on this. Which EAM application are you currently using? IBM Maximo, SAP, Infor, Oracle, and others. Request you for your voting. We will close the poll in the next 5 seconds. We have the results here. 38% of the audience are implementing IBM Maximo. 13% are using SAP. 25% are using Infor, and the remaining 25% are using others. Over to Joel.
All right, and thank you for those answers. What we control and the current conditions of those are critical. Managing critical assets have several essential elements. Knowing what we own and what we control. Most of us have other communities that we serve. If we are the main community in the utility or the host community, if you will, we might, the last one that I managed in Kansas City, we had 27 other municipal commercial customers. So we controlled assets of theirs, so they have to be factored into the asset management plan. So they're not only what we control, what we own and control, but where they're located, what their condition is. And condition isn't good, fair, poor, or a breeze by and say it looks pretty good. We're talking about actual condition, you know, based on some condition assessment, non-destructive testing, or physical inspection, and a determination of what the remaining life cycle is, and replacement value, RAV. I actually have it correct on your screen and my note screen. It's incorrect, but replacement asset value in today's dollars is important to making risk-based and cost-based decisions. This is a chart from a graphical representation of a AM program implementation and results of one of my older wastewater clients. They were a wastewater utility strictly. They spent $20 million a year for maintenance, including labor at the time. And the demonstration more or less speaks for itself. We implemented some front-end costs for asset management program over about 3 years. It cost about $4 million, and about $5 or $6 million, and it was supported from the top to the bottom by everybody in the organization, and these were the results. One of the things that I have to add is this was full-blown, unilaterally supported, top to bottom, but not at least what was a major corporate culture change for the utility. Approach pretty much every aspect of it, and I have to say everybody's comments were, what a shock. We actually had to work together, follow a plan, and analyze our action and change accordingly, and oh, it didn't hurt us. And I wanted to say, what do we mean by asset life cycle? And basically, you can see what it isn't, and then basically what it is an economic life cycle, when an asset no longer can do what it's and satisfy the level of performance or service and is the lowest cost alternative to do so. You can't determine when an asset's at the end of its economic life cycle without research, without planning, accurate data measurement, and cost analysis. Without these dynamics, you're just putting out fires rather than preventing them. Now, best practices for this include, and these are absolutely critical. I cannot stress enough that criticality and risk analysis are key to a focused and targeted effort to improve quality and the cost of service levels. Aging assets will surely control you if you're not proactively guiding their life cycles. And these are the elements that have to be performed to do that. Best practices also include criticality listing or mapping, and that's essential to make staff deployment and major repair decisions when resources are limited or atypical workloads present themselves, and we all get those. Emergency after emergency, 1 month you just want to pull your hair out. Well, when you have a good AM plan and failure defense plans, you know exactly what you're going to do, and you make decisions about what's more critical to your stakeholders and your level of service when you can't handle them all at once. That way you prioritize and get after them first. And FMEA's, failure modes effects analysis, are kind of the roadmap along with for those failure defense plans. Root cause failure analysis helps also with the circle of improvement to improve the failure defense plans over time when we have failures, and we can modify our plans. Determining risk and consequence of failure round out the criticality ranking efforts. Achieving minimum life cycle costs and what they are. They're actions we take from risk-based decisions, and they're the foundation for us to do the right thing at the right time and utilize the right staff and resources. Repair, rehab, and replace decisions are based on KPIs, targeted KPIs that assure the stakeholders that we're providing the level of services promised in the business plan and at the lowest cost. KPIs fall into several categories. Cost effectiveness, productivity, system reliability, scheduled and unscheduled maintenance, capital infrastructure, reinvestment, CIP planning, staffing levels, safety and compliance. I think we have another poll question at this time, Anurita.
Yes, we do. Requesting everybody to direct their attention to the screen. Rate the quality of your asset-related data within your CMMS or EAM for accuracy, consistency, and completeness. Very good, good, poor, or very poor. We will hang on for 5 seconds more. So we have the poll results now. 14% of you have rated it as very good. 29% of you believe that the quality is good. 43% believe that the quality is poor. And 14% believe that the quality is very poor. Over to Joel.
All right. The next slide might be a little busy for our webinar purposes, but hopefully in the copies that you'll receive later, these are helpful. This is an example of a KPI performance metric strategy map that we produced for one of our clients based on selected parts of their EAM plan. Okay, and they're broken up into those areas that we talked about: labor utilization, asset breakdowns, cost, accountability, reliability, and what some of the steps are. These types of flowcharts and maps are useful in the planning process to select relevant KPIs and procedures to control your assets effectively. You can't depend completely on your CMMSs or EAMs alone. You have to choose some of the data that you're going to go after and how you're going to organize it and present it. The next, let me see here. I have to, pardon me, back up one slide. And these next 5 slides, or next few slides, we've included some of the more popular KPIs that we've set up for our utility clients to track, and they're there for your reference. These are by no means all inclusive. Rather, they're just some examples of the more widely used indicators. I'll breeze over them quickly as they're provided in your copies of the presentation so as to save some time for Q&A. The first page is a number of cost-effective KPIs. The second page has cost-effective and then productivity, starting like with CCTV production, cost of CCTV per length inspected, cost of production and cost of hydraulically cleaned, so on. The next slide has PM tasks and things you might want to measure there to find out your productivity. The next one about system reliability and asset reliability. Next one, staffing level, items you might want to measure. And then reinvestment, and I didn't include one for safety, but we would normally put one for safety and risk. Oh, I do have some here, sorry. Energy consumption, environmental compliance, field injury severity, so I did include it, so shame on me. And we have another poll question from Anurita.
This is the last poll question for today. How well are you reporting? How well are your reporting and analytics aligned with the maintenance and repair strategy, plan, and activities to measure efficiency and effectiveness? Very good, good, poor, and very poor. We close the poll in 5 seconds. And we have the results here. 57% of you believe that the reporting and analytics is aligned in a good manner. 29% of you believe that it is poor. And 14% of you believe that it is very poor. Over to Joel.
All right, and the next 4 slides are copies of 4 sections of a KPI dashboard we produced for one of our clients to allow ease of comparison over time. Keep in mind various levels of management and personnel that manage workflow throughout an organization need different levels of data analysis and presentation for their stakeholders and themselves to manage their work. These dashboards contain 12-month lookbacks, graphs, and statistics that depict the key indicator performance at the wastewater treatment plants, sewer collection systems, and customer service, and some cost analysis. It is my opinion, and more often than not, even when we employ these types of tools, we don't tend to recognize that staff at different levels within the utility do require these varying types and degrees of data analysis related to their individual reporting. And therein you start to get disconnects where we work on our own and don't share in those silos of excellence. This is the wastewater treatment look back and KPIs. This is a customer service, one with service requests, internal, external, operational complaints, customer accounts, and requests by categories. In our costs, they're aggregated in certain manners that this particular client wanted to see, with some graphs, with some quarterly reporting against targets, with the stoplight indicators, red, yellow, green, and last but not least here, and if you'll allow me 1 second, I'm moving my notes along, were the benefits that you gain from this type of very detailed, everything tied to cost and preordained, managed life cycles is, and I don't like reading, but this is the punctuation slide, so I will read it. Prolonged asset life, enhanced rehab, repair, replace decision making via efficient and focused O&M. We meet our consumer demands with a focus on sustainability. Rates can be based on sound operations and financial planning and can stay lower over time. Budgets are focused on activities critical to sustain performance. Service expectations and regulatory requirements are more easily met and or exceeded. Response time to emergencies, which is a big one with the stakeholders, is improved, and security, safety, and risk is reduced, increased security and reduced risks for personnel and your assets. These are quite some substantial. If you want to go back and look at that graph that we talked about earlier for one of my clients, they had a $20 million budget and it dropped to $11 million, and they weren't sacrificing a thing. They just got rid of unfocused maintenance and unfocused tasks and deploying resources and money where they were actually needed the most. We have another webinar scheduled. Andy Reedy wanted me to let you know, data quality assessment for analytics of your assets on October 5th, same time, same bat channel. And I want to thank you for your attention, and I'll turn it back over to Anya Rita for questions and answers.
Joel, thank you very much. I'm sure all of our audience found it very engaging. Interestingly, we have a couple of questions that some of you have posted during the webinar. The first one would read as, what are the top priority KPIs that we can start with to manage our aging assets?
Could you, I'm sorry, Anya Rita, there was some back feed on that. Could you read that again one more time slowly?
Absolutely. What are the top priority KPIs that we can start with to manage our aging assets?
Well, the most important KPIs, in my opinion, are what the remaining useful life cycle is and what the replacement asset value is, and start to determine, as we mentioned, where that asset or system is on its economic life cycle. Most of us don't have that. Unfortunately, about 80% of the utilities in the United States tend to be municipally owned, and they do line item budgeting rather than activity-based costing. So one of the other things you can do is actually, and I don't mean this in the illegal sense, but run a second set of books that actually does your budgeting and manages your activities based on costs. You may still have to present a line item budget to your board or to the city fathers, but you can do a much better job by tracking costs that way.
Thanks, Joel. The next question would be, how do we compute and rationalize maintenance costs of aging assets?
One of my favorites, and I had mentioned that replacement asset values are important. They can be gotten by having some people. We used to use all the folks that we didn't want to have a lost time injury rate, so they were on light duty. to call up vendors and find out, you know, a system or a major asset, I don't know, a centrifuge or whatever it is, you know, what would be the replacement value in kind for that. So when you have those RAVs, as we call them, I like to measure a percentage of maintenance dollars spent annually against the RAV. And I have to tell you, off the top of my head, I believe it's when it starts to exceed 3%, you have to start looking at whether it's time to refurbish or replace. But I don't want to be quoted on that number. I don't have my notes in front of me. But that's one of my favorite ways to analyze whether we're getting the value out of our assets.
Are there any other questions from the audience that we can take at this point of time? Feel free to write on the chat, or you can write to us later. With this, we come to the close of our webinar. Just to reiterate, our next webinar topic will be data quality assessment for analytics of your assets on the 5th of October 2017, and we will send you an invitation to join that webinar shortly. I thank everyone who joined this webinar. The participation of people in different US time zones and other parts of the world is very, very encouraging. We will be happy to receive your feedback for the webinar today. And if you have any suggestions for webinar specifically to your area of interest, please do send us an email and we will try to arrange a webinar session around that topic. Any service inquiries are also welcome and we shall be glad to assist. Once again, thank you everyone and have a lovely day ahead.